know that you had an introduction of our what we're doing right now, and so is it okay we start shooting out the questions now?
Of course it is, yes. And presumably you'll edit this because if we're going to discuss certain things.
Oh yes, of course.
Okay then. Okay.
We would like to start off asking, what kind of organization exactly are you? Like, what do you do?
Well, our primary purpose is to run a hotline which is open 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and that includes Christmas and Chinese New Year. And we're there for everybody in Hong Kong, primarily. So anybody who wants to can phone us. And we have both Cantonese speakers, we have English speakers, and we cover some other languages, not every language. And we're there for people who are suicidal or just depressed or feeling anxious or worried. You don't have to be suicidal to phone us. That's our main purpose, our main focus. And we also have an email service. So some people who, for whatever reason, may not want to phone us or can't, and they can email us. And sometimes we get people from Canada or mainland China who do that because they want to be able to talk to somebody who's living back in Hong Kong. For email, we have a separate Chinese service to a separate English service. So that's what goes on at the centre. And then we have some outreach activities. And we have a project for young people, which largely is based up in the New Territories, in some of the areas where there are some social problems. We also are starting a project with the elderly, which is we're piloting that at the moment. And those are all ones that don't happen at the centre, they happen outside. And we also run a group for people who are bereaved by suicide. So those are our extra activities. And occasionally we go and do talks if somebody asks us. And that could be to a business, to a corporation, could be to a school like this, could be to any other organisation that asks us. We will try and do what we can.
So I just want to ask, like, this organization, it started around 1997, right?
No, it's 40 years in Hong Kong.
Oh,
wow.
It's been just over 40 years in Hong Kong, well before I was here. And it started from England originally, whereby Chad Vara started it, based in London. And he opened his doors to people who wanted to come and talk. And from there, Samaritans grew. Now, it has, obviously, the Samaritans, people think of it as a church-based organisation, but it isn't. There is no association with any particular religious organisation or belief. And one of the things that we insist with our volunteers is that when they are at the centre, they divorce themselves from their religious beliefs. We have people from every religion who work as volunteers for us, but once you're at that centre, you're a slightly different person. It's outside that religious belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the Samaritans' goals?
Well, in the long term, it would be, I think one of the goals would be that anyone who's feeling depressed or anxious or suicidal calls us, which is a huge goal. And we're there to be able for them to talk to us, because one of the key things about serious depression, I'm not talking about when you're having an off day, and people use that word, I'm depressed.
Yeah, in one generation that happens a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they use it to mean
They
I'm
use
just a
it
bit fed up.
very lightly.
Yes, but I'm talking about it in that more clinical sense, moving towards that. So that whenever they feel that way, and very often these people have got very serious problems, and that there is somebody they can talk to, because often there is nobody. They've often got to the end of whatever social network there is in Hong Kong, the end of the medical services. They can't go any further. They don't have family to talk to. They don't have friends. They don't have a school counsellor or those sorts of resources. They have nobody. And it must be awful living in isolation. I mean, there are 7 million people in Hong Kong, but they might well live in isolation. And I think our goal is that making everybody aware that we're there to help them, that there is somebody who cares about them.
Are there any obstacles or challenges that are blocking you from this goal right now? Or?
Yes, I think we are a fairly small organisation. We have about 110 volunteers. We have limited resources, financially and otherwise. So I think we can only do so much. We don't necessarily have the resources we would like to be able to advertise as widely as we do. Some people, some organisations are kind enough to give us free advertising, but you know yourselves that advertising costs are high.
Yes.
And because it's Samaritans and it's suicide, it's not sweet and gentle. If I think about Mother's Choice, which I think is a wonderful organisation, and I think about Animals Asia, and again, that's lovely, but that's got a cuteness factor.
Exactly. There's like a face to it.
Yes, but there isn't a face to Samaritans, and as I was saying to you, one of our key principles is that to a large extent we're anonymous. So somebody phones us and they don't know who they're talking to. They'll pick up because of my voice that I'm female and I'm an expatriate.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, they won't pick anything else up. I wouldn't tell them my name. I would use a pseudonym if they ask. So I could be anybody in Hong Kong. And that, for sometimes, in some situations, that's easier for people to talk to rather than talk to somebody they know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I know that you, try to raise awareness
Yes.
about, your current goals and things like that. But, what do you think is, important in our modern generation to, raising, awareness of depression?
I think it's important that early signs of depression are identified, and that I think that's where the importance of friends and getting help early on, so that somebody, young teenagers, who may be exhibiting signs of depression, and of course their peers, even their teachers, are not experts. We can't actually diagnose depression.
Yes, it's emotional.
Yeah, and a psychiatrist needs to do that. So, but we can suspect when there's something wrong. And as you were saying, we need to be careful about it being something trivial, like I'm depressed because I missed the bus, or something a little bit more. And I think one of the keys for that is if you are suspicious, it's persuading that person to talk to an adult who can then get them the help they need, because that adult probably can't really help them. Your teachers are brilliant people. But
Hello.
hello.
Hi, I'm Mr. Santos and
Hello,
Lino.
Deborah Crouch. Nice to meet
Nice
you.
to
I'm
meet
from
you.
Samaritans,
Yeah.
yes. So,
Please receive. Can I get you a cup of coffee or something?
oh
like
yes,
that?
please.
Yeah, okay, I'll get you some
Black coffee would be lovely.
Black coffee.
Yes, please.
Strong or?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. Sorry, you was I was thinking about getting help. And I think getting your teachers are not psychiatrists.
Yes.
Parents are not psychiatrists.
Mm-hmm.
But they do know the next step.
Yeah.
And I think catching depression early is key, because unless you catch it early, you can have all sorts of problems for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think people like counsellors presume we have some sort of counselling system here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Counsellors, social workers, all of those are absolutely vital. And I think sometimes, tough as it may sound, if you are concerned about your friends and they keep saying to you, no, everything's fine, I don't want you to tell anyone. In a way, sometimes you have to break that trust and you do have to tell somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the obvious signs like cutting and weight loss that are associated, self-harm, eating disorders, all of those things those are more tangible.
Yes. Yeah.
But sometimes there's a state of mind, particularly if it goes on for a long period of time. I mean, I know at your age we all have off days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your bodies are doing things chemically, and some days you can feel great and other days you feel awful. That's not depression. But when you have somebody who's 2, 3, 4 weeks, I think that's when, as a friend, you need to step in and ideally persuade that person to talk to someone. But if not, voice your concerns to whoever. Whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, counsellor. I don't know your system here.
Yeah. Well,
but
we
it's,
have like a counsellor for every grade.
Yeah.
Specific one, so.
Yeah. But even if that person won't see that particular counsellor, sometimes they'll feel happier with a different member of staff, won't they? Or presumably you have a system of homeroom teachers, tutors or something.
We do.
Yeah.
Yes.
But somebody like that, anything at all, would be my advice.
Okay.
Because catching it early is so important.
So, as you already established, you believe it's important to teach kids earlier about depression. Do you think it's most important to teach kids our age, like from 12 to 15, or do you think we should mostly target another age group?
Cases of depression in children younger than early teens are very minimal. And usually they're associated with something tangible, like the death of a parent, in which case there will already be medical social services working. I think the more critical age is teenagers, and I think it's at the times of puberty. This is when things really start. So you're talking about 10 to 15. I'm not so sure that. Yes, you do occasionally get it lower, but I'm not so sure that it's quite that distinct.
Yes.
So I think, yes, the age range you were talking about, perhaps a little bit younger. Yeah. But not alarm people, and not encourage people just because you have an off day to jump to the conclusion that they're depressed, because it doesn't work like that. Yes. Or you've got a bad grade, or you don't want to do sport or something. Those are all, and it's keeping that level-headedness, knowing, and that's where sometimes, believe it or not, teachers and parents are a little bit better at knowing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you just mentioned like puberty as being one of like kind of the reasons.
Yeah.
Teens trying to like get into like emotional mood swings. Are there any other like major reasons? Why?
Yeah, I mean you get the pressure. I think inevitably pressure in Hong Kong from parents. Huge amount.
Yes.
I mean, I imagine you have a lot of parents who will only accept, I don't know your grading system,
High standard.
Yeah, A+,
Yeah.
Yes.
or whatever it is, and maybe you can get a lower grade for sport, but that's about it, sport and drama.
Yes.
Yes, and I think there's a huge amount of pressure outside the school.
Oh yes.
I look at the numbers of students who have extra tutorial lessons. So they spend all day at school. I think you probably know lots who do this, all day at school, and then they go off to tutorials in the evening. So they have no time to be teenagers. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
I didn't. Do you want some sugar?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm disturbing you all, I know, but
No,
I just wanted to introduce myself to you.
Thank you.
I'm their teacher, and this is Emily's project and
Yeah.
Tristan's project. Yeah.
They're doing incredibly well here.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Great students.
they are very good. So, yes. And it's quite unusual, actually, to be approached by students quite so young,
Mm-hmm.
which was great.
Yeah, we've been doing this compassion project for about 5 years now. And actually, I don't know whether I mentioned this, but this is the first time they've actually, somebody has actually raised the issue of depression. And I was kind of really, I found it really interesting because I have my sister-in-law is a counselor in India, back in India. She's a high school counselor. And over summer, we had this discussion where she said, this is actually a ticking time bomb. And the next century is going to witness this problem in quite a significant way. And then I come back to school, and Emily and you and Haita also start talking about it. And
Yes.
so I thought it was a great project to do. So I'm sorry I disturbed you.
No,
Carry on, okay? Okay,
Thank
see
you.
you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
As you mentioned before, you were quite surprised that people our age were talking about depression.
Not talking about it because that doesn't surprise me, but I think what surprised me was that you contacted us. We obviously get lots of requests from universities, from the equivalent of your high school, but it's quite unusual to get a request of this nature from middle school students, and that's what sort of interested me.
One thing I believe kind of drives depression is kind of social media and society these days, because there's a lot of judgment on body image and like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So do you maybe have some ideas why you think depression is such a big issue in today's society?
I wish I did, but I think one of the things you talked about, particularly with girls, and it's increasing with boys as well. You look at the amount of cosmetic healthcare products that are now on the market for boys. It's just incredible.
Yes.
And as you say, this sense of having to conform to being a certain size and weight and hairstyle and everything, which we're not. None of us are like that. I think that's part of it. I think there's the parental push for grades, as we've said. Schools are under increasing pressure. I don't know your school so much, but for things like league tables, to succeed, to get more students through exams on certain levels, to get you into the Ivy League universities, all of those things. So I think all of these pressures are coming on young people. And I think through social media as well, we're losing the ability to communicate face to face. Perhaps not so much my generation, but your generation. It's all tablet communication, isn't it? And there's that sense of almost isolation because of that. Because you have all of these groups, WhatsApp and that, and everything is being thrown around. But at the same point, a lot of it is trivial. Do you really, I don't know, talk about the things that matter? Do you have that time? How much time do children your age have with parents? The family units are changing, working patterns are changing. All of those, I think, contribute. I mean, I'm not a sociologist, but I'm sure they can give you a much better answer than I do. All I know is that the things are increasing. Yes. Yeah.
Alright, so I know depression isn't such a well-known issue in the world right now. So are there any facts that people share about depression?
you could probably Google it and find ones better than I could get about offhand about depression. I think the problem with it is that it is difficult. It's not quite so tangible as broken legs are easy. You can see it. You can produce some sort of charts on that. I think so much depression goes untreated. It goes unrecognised. It's a term that covers a wide range. Much of it is hidden, particularly I think in Asian societies. There's a stigma associated with it. Not just Asian families, but there is this sense of keeping problems in the family within the family.
Yeah.
And therefore we don't really know the figures. The suicide figures in Hong Kong are worrying. Huge increase in numbers in teenagers, people in their early 20s, mainly males. So we have all of those issues. And of course in some parts of the world, including Hong Kong, treatment is very limited. Understanding of it is very limited. There is, it's okay in Hong Kong if you have money and you can pay to see a psychiatrist and psychologist privately. But if you don't, waiting lists are very long. Government psychiatrists are overworked. They see you for 5-10 minutes, maybe once every 6 weeks, which just
it just doesn't work.
I think the government here, Legico, is beginning to wake up to the fact. I think things are changing, but it'll take a long while. And it also needs society's attitudes to change, to be in Hong Kong for people to acknowledge that this happens. It is an issue.
Have you ever personally worked with people depressed, apart from calling? Because sometimes it can be different over the phone and face to face.
Yes, I have worked with people who have been depressed. And in certain cases I haven't been aware of it. Because one of the things about depression is that some people are very good at hiding it. Very good indeed. And you wouldn't know. They're quite sophisticated. The facade is there. They appear on the surface to be absolutely fine. Yes. And because they've had years of practice at it. And yes, I have. In my professional life, outside Samaritans, I have worked with people. Obviously in Samaritans, I only hear people on the phone. I don't meet them.
So, I know, okay, so if this question is too personal, you don't have to answer
That's
it.
okay.
And, we're just trying to do whatever's comfortable for you. So, have you yourself personally been, depressed or experienced?
No, I've never been diagnosed with depression, and I don't think I've been there. I've had some very low moments in my life, like most people, I think, most adults have. I've had some very lonely moments. But I've never had depression. I've never felt that I'm in that spiral where I can't get out, and that's what depression is. It's that spiral where it's going down and down. And somebody described it as being like in a cave, and it's just darkness, darkness, darkness. You can't turn around, or it's like a boulder on top of you. You can't move it. I've never been like that, no.
Okay, so I know this also might be passing. This might be passing the boundary of confidentiality.
It's okay.
So are there any stories of success through depression you can share with us?
From Samaritans?
Yes.
Well, I can share with you ones when people phone up and thank us because they've said to me, or whoever they speak to, can you tell the volunteers this? So most of the time, and I won't use any names, we never know. We never know whether the person's going to jump. We never know whether they're going to kill themselves. You can look in the paper, but you don't know. We had a very nice gentleman a few years ago who wrote to thank us and told me that when he had been in Hong Kong many years ago, he'd found life very difficult, very lonely. He didn't actually use the word depressed, but that he'd phoned us a number of times and that he would like us to thank the volunteers. We occasionally get stories like that. A lady who had some form of depression following the birth of her baby, which again is not uncommon in all societies. And she phoned us several times and then sent us a picture when the baby was a year old, saying, which I thought was lovely, and we stuck it on our board, saying, really thought you'd like to have this. I feel so much better. Thank you for being there, and thank you for being there in the middle of the night. Because sometimes these depressed people might have support during the day, but it's 2 or 3 in the morning when they can't sleep, because one of the symptoms of depression is you can't sleep. And night after night of not being able to sleep. And it can be that spiral. So those are 2 stories, yes.
And what are some strategies or ways that you can overcome or cope with depression?
I think if you've really got depression, it's a sense of you do need help. Because if you're diagnosed with clinical depression, you need some sort of intervention. And what we would always suggest is that if somebody talked to us and it seemed to us that they had that, we would never make that diagnosis, but we might suggest, have you seen a doctor? Because they will probably need some sort of drug intervention, possibly some sort of behavioural therapy. And we're not the people to say, this is what you need, because we're all volunteers. I mean, I work in a completely different capacity, and so does everybody else. We have people who are bankers, who are in insurance, who are in education, all sorts of things. So we're not healthcare professionals, but I think people who talk about these things, talk about these feelings of being incredibly lonely, isolated, no one to talk to, there doesn't seem any way out. All of that is classic. And at some point we might suggest, have you seen a doctor or healthcare professional? I don't think it's possible, really, with depression, to battle it yourself. I really don't.
So, as you said before, they're you have to be aware of the early signs of depression.
Yeah.
So, what are the major signs that someone is suffering depression?
We're talking about teenagers or anybody?
Anybody.
One major signs is withdrawing into oneself, becoming quiet, and possibly not going out. But all of this can be this isn't necessarily, it can mean something else entirely. It can mean, okay. So I think we've got that sort of element of it. It's change in eating habits, not just say for wanting to eat more healthily. Dress, clothing, possibly lack of attention to personal hygiene, those sorts of things. Nervous gestures, repeated. All of those things start to have implications. Possibly being very quick-tempered over relatively trivial issues. So all of those would start to indicate that maybe that person is depressed. Fixations with things that become, over a long period of time, unreasonable. Not fixations with, I don't know, who's going to win the rugby.
Yes.
I mean, that's normal, particularly at teenager level. So you've got to differentiate that But that's fixations with something that you're beginning to think this is not quite right. Maybe fixation with, I don't know, a particular issue. It doesn't, but all of these don't necessarily mean depression.
Yes.
And you have to be very, very careful at teenager level, because it can mean you're changing anyway, and personalities change from people being very outgoing to very quiet. Okay, sleep patterns is another one, where you have significant long-term changes in sleep patterns that are not normal. Now, again, teenagers are all over the place, and they stay up all night, I'm sure, and then they crash out, and they can sleep till 1 o'clock in the morning, and so you have to be very careful not to jump to too many conclusions.
Something that I think a lot of people, or at least are worried, or something that I've struggled with myself, is if a friend or someone you know comes to you and tells you they're depressed, how should you react?
I think initially you just listen.
So,
one of the skills that we advocate is what we call active listening, and that's when we don't interrupt. We listen to what the person is saying, and we listen to the emotions, and we perhaps ask open questions, ask them to talk a little bit more. So I think that would be, if somebody comes to you, someone your own age, I think that's what you should do initially. I think you're also looking for whether it's just momentarily or whether it's long term. Reassuring them that you're there for them, and knowing that perhaps picking up on it in 2-3 weeks, because if something's going on that long, then that is starting to tell me that something's wrong. As I said before, it could be sort of 24 hours things, and that's quite normal. But I think you're looking for long-term patterns.
So, as you might have known, we were doing the presentation about raising awareness of depression. So, what suggestions would you have to help us out?
And this is to be presented to your peers, is it?
Yes.
Oh dear, wearing awareness. I think one of the things that you've obviously got to do is signs of depression, what to look for in teenagers mainly. I think you've got to be very careful though of misdiagnosis, because yes. And I think you've got to be very careful to put it forward that these signs do not necessarily mean somebody's depressed, and you are not in a position to diagnose. So I think that would be that. And then it's just simply, what do you do? And what you do is try and get that person to see an adult who will be able to put him or her in touch with the right sort of help. So I think it would just be those two, what there is. Also the fact that there is no shame about depression, and I think that's something in this part of the world it's felt it's a stigma, very much depression, and I think you've got to try and somehow get over that. But it's only the same as having a broken leg, or I don't know, what else is common at your age that isn't embarrassing?
Broken nose.
Yeah, a sports injury.
Yeah.
Or maybe some illness.
Yes, I mean, what else do people get?
Right now, people aren't really aware of depression, because the world is kind of focused on cancer and AIDS, and some people things they can see. So
and that's it, and it's an emotional disease. So sometimes physically they don't look any different.
Yes,
they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
But it's also that cry for help. So looking for the person who's isolated in class, repeatedly. Now, some people like working by themselves. Some people don't like talking to others in class. And that's how they work. And again, that's fine. It doesn't mean to tell you that they're depressed. But making sure that if you're in groups, I don't know how it works at your school, but that you don't have people who are left out.
No, actually not that often, because this school actually like focuses a lot on like teamwork and collaboration.
But I feel like one thing that goes on a lot in our school, I don't know if it's outside as well, is depression. Like, it's not, if somebody says that they're depressed, other people might be more cautious around them. They might think it's a little weird because they're not used to it. And a lot of people, like at our school, they can joke about a lot of serious things, and depression being one of them. And sometimes it's just trying to fit in. So even if it's just a joke, or if it's something that you think is mean, sometimes you feel the pressure that you can't speak up, because then other people will judge you.
I can understand what you're saying, and I think somehow or other you've got to find a way around that. People will judge, yes. But if you're worried about somebody, if you noticed your friend had a weight loss, I mean, anorexia in girls is quite common, what would you do then? Supposing you've got a friend and you thought, good grief, they're losing weight quickly, and you noticed at lunchtime they're not eating, what would you do?
I feel like this is a tricky situation, because a lot of people who are depressed, they kind of don't want to do something about it, or they don't want other people to know, and try to help them, because if it's something like an eating disorder, they're trying to do that too, because they think that it's something that they should do, because they think that it's something that they want, like if they're losing weight, to try to become pretty or something. And I feel like that's tricky, because they might not see it as something really dangerous and harmful. They just might see it as a way to lose weight quickly.
Yes. I would agree. Yeah, and I mean, with depression, they might not want help. I think it's very difficult, though, at your age, because, as we said, people banter around that depressed. And I think somebody who's really depressed, you would notice a change in behaviour. And I really do think just as anorexics need help, depression needs help. And I'm not in a position to help anorexics. They need that. They need very specialist help.
Sometimes when you're talking to peers, they might just brush it off, like it's a phase, it's nothing big. So since we're going to be talking to some parents about depression, what do you think parents need to know about teenage depression, like their child being depressed?
Much the same as I was saying to you, that there are, you can find them, you can Google them as well, there are clear signs, and they've got to be aware of those signs. But I think my advice to parents always would be, give your children time and listen, because one of the big issues nowadays across the Western world is that because of working patterns, parents don't necessarily have that much time with their children, so they're not noticing.
And a lot of children, like these days, they kind of tend to lock themselves in their room and don't want to talk to the parents and their families, so it can be difficult.
So my advice would always be, parents have got to find a way. If it means going out to eat, and you leave the mobile phone at home. It's hard. I think it's very hard for parents, indeed, because they'll feel responsible, and it might not be their fault at all. But I think it's important that they are aware of this, and they try. Yes. Go on,
Sorry.
just ask
So
me.
because we're actually running a little like late on time.
Sorry.
It's
It's
fine.
okay. Yes. So is there like a small statement you would like to make to like children our age about depression?
Ooh, right. I think it's not about depression. I'd just say listen to your friends. I think that would be what I would say.
Okay.
Because it's about listening, and it's about really listening,
Yes.
not just listening to the superficial. And there's all sorts of work being done about how we don't listen.
Okay.
One last thing I would like
Okay.
to talk to you about. It's not on this sheet,
It's
but
okay.
I would really like to expand this more beyond our compassion project. Like, I don't want it. We're doing this just for a grade or something, and then giving it up. But one thing that we can do is social media. We can like post things and advertise things, and we're trying to come up with a campaign as well, and maybe that can extend to something more. So, like, we're thinking about making a few videos or a website about depression and see where that goes. But would it be all right if we kind of added you to our campaign?
I think that would be great.
Yes.
Yes. And if you are going to do that, get back to me about it, because we
Yes.
do have a publicity gentleman who's in charge of that,
Okay.
and we do have some connection with PR companies.
Mhm.
Certain of them will do pro bono work for us.
Mhm.
Do you know what that means? Pro bono is when a company decides, that they will give a charity, for example, say 7 hours free, 7 hours of their time at no cost, or just at expenses costs per month or something. So I think that would be a lovely idea, yes. And we will support you
Thank you.
as far as we can.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you
Thank you.
for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Well, I
much.
hope it's
This
been
was-
useful.
Yeah,
It-
this
it's
was very